Namaste and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the what, why, and how of newspaper reading. Now we would be analyzing the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper of 18th of December 2018, and the news that would be covered today is given on the screen, and the timestamp for the same is given in the description and the comment section given below. And so now with this, let us start with the first article. Now we have taken this article from the editorial page on page 8. Now the first thing that we'll try to understand from this article is its recent context. Now in April of 2018, the Union Health Ministry had banned the retail sale and the private manufacturing of Oxytocin. However, what has recently happened is that the Delhi High Court has revoked the decision of the Government of India to ban the retail sale and private manufacturing of Oxytocin. Now you need to understand three aspects from this article, wherein the first aspect is what is oxytocin? The second aspect that you need to understand is why was it banned? And the third and the final aspect that you need to understand is why was the ban on the retail sale and private manufacturing of oxytocin revoked by the Delhi High Court? Now oxytocin is a hormone that is secreted by the pituitary gland. Now this hormone plays an important role in reproduction, childbirth and lactation. Now oxytocin also acts as a neurotransmitter. Now this hormone oxytocin is released in all mammals, including humans. Now the reason oxytocin was banned in India was that it was being misused to ensure that there was more milk production from farm animals. Now what would dairy farmers in India would do is inject cows and other milch animals with oxytocin, and what this would do was induce artificial labor in farm animals. And because of this artificial labor, the milch cows would be producing more milk. Now this use of oxytocin to induce artificial labor was considered to cause a lot of pain to farm animals. And apart from that, there was also a fear that this hormone may be transmitted from the animal to its milk and from the milk to humans. And because of these two reasons, the Government of India banned the retail sale and the private manufacturing of oxytocin. However, the main reason as to why the ban was revoked by the Delhi High Court. Now the first reason as to why the Delhi High Court revoked the ban was that the oxytocin drug is an essential medicine used in childbirth. Apart from this, the World Health Organization has also said that the oxytocin drug is an essential medicine that is required during complications in childbirth. Apart from this, the Delhi High Court has also said that there is not enough evidence to show that oxytocin is being misused on farm animals. And the last reason as to why the ban was revoked is because according to this article, all statutory bodies such as the Drugs Technical Advisory Board have all advised against banning oxytocin. So now hopefully up till here you've understood that oxytocin is a hormone that is secreted by the pituitary gland. And oxytocin, apart from being a hormone, also acts as a neurotransmitter. Now this oxytocin is released in all mammals including humans, and it plays an important role in lactation, childbirth and reproduction. However, what had happened was that the Government of India banned the retail sale and the private manufacturing of oxytocin in April of 2018. And the reason the Government of India issued this ban was that it was being misused on farm animals to induce more milk production, where what the dairy farmers would do was inject farm animals with oxytocin, and this oxytocin would induce artificial labor in farm animals, and this would cause the farm animals to release more milk. Now this hormone oxytocin was being injected into cattle such as cows, and the milk that was produced from such cattle was being consumed by humans, and there was a fear that the consumption of this milk from cows who have been injected with oxytocin would lead to hormonal imbalance in humans. However, what has happened now is that the Delhi High Court has revoked this ban on oxytocin. And the reason the Delhi High Court has revoked this ban is first because it is an essential medicine which is used in childbirth. And apart from that, there has been no strong evidence of its misuse among farm animals. And apart from that, major statutory organizations such as the Drugs Technical Advisory Board has also advised that oxytocin should not be banned. And therefore it was within that context that the Delhi High Court has revoked the ban on the retail sale and the private manufacturing of oxytocin. So now hopefully you've understood the main focus of this article. Now question for your practice is consider the following statements on oxytocin. Now what you need to do is pause this video, solve this question and wait for 5 seconds for the correct answer. Now the correct answer to this question is B, 2 only. Wherein with regards to the first statement, It is naturally produced in milch cattle. However, what is happening is that dairy farmers are giving injections of oxytocin drug to farm animals such as milch cattle to induce artificial labor so as to produce more milk. However, apart from the artificial injection, oxytocin is naturally produced in milch cattle. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from the editorial page on page 8. Now the focus of this article is quite small, wherein the author has given figures from the recently held elections in Telangana, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Mizoram and Chhattisgarh. And the author is trying to say that NOTA or none of the above option has not been instrumental in altering the electoral verdict. And in support of this argument, the author has given various figures from the recently held elections. And the reason the author is saying as to why NOTA has not been instrumental in changing an electoral verdict is because the votes that have been provided under NOTA are generally not higher than the margin of victory that is seen in Indian elections. Now, this basically means that if Party A has gotten 1000 votes and Party B has gotten 900 votes, the margin of victory would be of 100 votes, wherein the Party A has won the election by having 100 votes more than the Party B. And what is generally seen is that the number of votes that is given under NOTA would generally be smaller than the margin of victory in an election in India. The second reason given by the author is that during the recent elections that were held in 5 states, 4 of the 5 states have shown a decline in the use of NOTA. Now the author has provided figures from the recently held election, wherein in Madhya Pradesh, the use of NOTA has reduced from 1.4% to 1.3%, while in Rajasthan, the use of NOTA reduced from 1.9% to 1.3%. Similarly, in Chhattisgarh, the use of NOTA reduced from 3% to 1.6%. And there was a similar reduction in the use of NOTA also in Mizoram. And therefore, what the author is trying to highlight is that in most recent elections that are being held in India have shown a decline in the use of the none of the above option. The third reason given by the author as to why NOTA has not been instrumental in changing an electoral victory is that in most of the elections from 2014 onwards, the use of NOTA has generally been between 0.5% to 1.5%. The fourth reason given by the author is that the total constituencies in which NOTA votes were higher than the margin of victory in a particular election are seen to be equally distributed among major parties. Now, with regards to this, the author has given the recent example of the election held in Madhya Pradesh, wherein in Madhya Pradesh there were 23 seats in which the votes that were given under NOTA were higher than the margin of victory. So let's say if the margin of victory was 900 votes, maybe 1000 people had voted under NOTA. And what the author is trying to show is that the number of seats in which the NOTA voters were higher than the margin of victory, the seats are generally equally distributed between the ruling party and the leading opposition party, wherein the ruling party in Madhya Pradesh got 10 seats, while the leading opposition party in Madhya Pradesh got 12 seats. And similarly, the author has also given the example of Rajasthan, in which there were 16 assembly seats in which the NOTA voters were higher than the margin of victory. And similarly in Rajasthan also, the ruling party got 8 seats, while the leading opposition party got 7 seats, and 1 seat was won by an independent. And apart from this, the author has given various other examples of elections in India in which the NOTA voters were higher than the margin of victory. However, the seats in which the NOTA voters were higher than the margin of victory were equally distributed between the ruling and the leading opposition party. And therefore, what the author is trying to show is that NOTA voters does not support either the ruling party or the leading opposition party. And the fifth and the last reason given by the author as to why NOTA has not been instrumental in changing an electoral verdict is because NOTA is a negative and an invalid vote. Now, the Election Commission of India in itself has said that NOTA is a form of invalid vote, whereby if there is a particular election in which there are 1000 total electors, in which Party A has gotten 1 vote, but Party B has gotten 2 votes, while NOTA has received 997 votes, then under Indian election rules, it would be Party B which would have won the election. And it does not matter that there have been more votes under NOTA, since NOTA is a form of negative vote, whereby the people are showing that they do not want any of the candidates above. And therefore, what this means is that NOTA has no form of electoral value. And this is what the author is trying to say is that NOTA has not been instrumental in changing an electoral verdict because NOTA in itself has no form of electoral value and does not decide as to which person would be elected or not. So now hopefully you've understood the main points that have been given by the author as to why NOTA or none of the above option that is given in elections in India has not been instrumental in changing an electoral verdict. When the first reason given by the author is that votes given under NOTA are rarely seen to be higher than the margin of victory in Indian elections. And apart from this, in recent elections in India, there have been a decline in the use of NOTA, whereby most states that have been polled after 2014 have shown a use of NOTA between 0.5% to 1.5%. And even in cases in which NOTA voters were higher than the margin of victory, it was seen that the constituencies were equally distributed between the ruling and the leading opposition party. Wherein, if taken an example of the recent elections held in Madhya Pradesh, there were 23 seats in which the NOTA voters were higher than the margin of victory. However, what was seen is that the number of seats that went to the ruling party and the leading opposition party were almost equally distributed. And the same was the scenario in the recently held elections in Rajasthan, in which 16 constituencies had NOTA voters which were higher than the margin of victory. But the seats were almost equally distributed between the ruling and the leading opposition party. And it is within that context that the author has said that NOTA has no form of electoral value. That even if the person who has won the election had less votes as compared to NOTA, this particular person would still be elected. And therefore, it should be understood that NOTA is a form of negative and an invalid vote, whereby you're not selecting any of the candidates that have been given above. And therefore, it is because of these five reasons that the author has said that NOTA has not been instrumental in changing an electoral verdict in India. Now, this article and the explanation given in this section should be seen from the perspective of JS Paper 2 within the section Governance and within the subsection Important Aspects of Governance, Transparency and Accountability. And when we say important aspects, it means important aspects of NOTA with regards to improving governance, transparency and accountability in elections in India. Wherein you have to understand that this article is a critical analysis of NOTA itself, wherein the author has given various examples as to why NOTA has not been instrumental in changing an electoral verdict. Now, question for your practice is which of the statements about none of the above on NOTA option are correct. And what you need to do is pause this video, solve this question, and wait for 5 seconds for the correct answer. Now, the correct answer to this question is A, one only. Wherein, as you already understand, that the Election Commission of India has said that NOTA is a form of an invalid vote, since it does not have any form of electoral value. And with regards to statement number 2, if NOTA receives the highest votes above all listed candidates, then the elections would not be declared null and void. And the person who has gotten the maximum number of votes would still be declared the person who has won that election. And with regards to statement number 3, it is not implemented either in the presidential election or in the election of the Rajya Sabha members. Wherein if a question is asked as to whether it is implemented in the elections of Lok Sabha members, then you should know that this is correct, wherein it is implemented in general elections of India. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 1, and this article also continues on page 10. Now what this article talks about is that India has declared a financial package of 1.4 billion for Maldives. Now this package that India has provided to Maldives would be in the form of budgetary support, currency swap agreement and concession lines of credit. And the main purpose that India is providing this budgetary allocation to Maldives is that it would help Maldives, which is facing a debt trap of China at $3.2 billion. Apart from this, this package will also help in development programs of Maldives. Now, this is the only information that is required to be understood from this article. But what we'll do further is understand the election of Ibrahim Mohammed Soli, who has been elected as the new president of Maldives, and what have been the concerns of India with regards to Maldives. Now, I'll try to understand this with the help of the Focus magazine. More specifically, the October edition of the Focus magazine, wherein the Maldives election and the Indian concerns with regards to Maldives was covered in the international relations section. Now what had happened was that Ibrahim Mohammed Soli, who was the opposition leader in Maldives, defeated the current president Abdullah Yameen. wherein what had happened was that Maldives, under the presidency of Abdullah Yameen, had shown various political concerns for India. When the first political concern for India with regards to Maldives is the enhanced Chinese presence. Now, Maldives signed its first country specific free trade agreement with China in 2017, and this also became China's second free trade agreement in South Asia after Pakistan. Now, when we say country specific free trade agreement, it means that Maldives has only signed a free trade agreement with the SAARC organization, and this free trade agreement is known as SAFTA. However, Maldives has not signed any form of free trade agreement with any other country. And this free trade agreement that was signed between China and the government of President Yameen of Maldives became the first free trade agreement that Maldives has with any country. Now, this raised concerns in India, wherein it is expected that this country specific FTA that Maldives has signed with China may deepen the debt trap that Maldives has with China. When currently what is happening is more than 70% of the foreign debt that Maldives owes is to China. Apart from that, what has also been seen is that there is a growing trend of Chinese companies and individuals acquiring premium land in Maldives. And it has been said that this Chinese land grab in Maldives is more than what East India Company had acquired in Maldives during the colonial period. And this land grab by the Chinese companies and Chinese individuals has also raised concerns in India, wherein it has been considered that Maldives may fall into an economic neo-colonial trap of China, wherein this has raised concerns in India that this enhanced Chinese presence in Maldives would compromise the political sovereignty of Maldives. And thereby there was a fear in India that Maldives may fall into becoming an ally of China and not of India. The second concern with regards to Maldives that India had was the declaration of emergency that was made by President Abdullah Yameen, wherein what President Yameen did was arrest the former president, shut down the Supreme Court of Maldives, and not allow the proper functioning of the Parliament of Maldives. However, after this declaration of emergency, India, the United States, Europe, and various other countries put pressure on Maldives to conduct proper free and fair elections. And in September of 2018, elections were conducted in Maldives, in which the opposition leader Ibrahim Mohammed Solih won the election. And the third main concern for India with regards to Maldives is the growing radicalization of the youth of Maldives, wherein there is a growing presence of ISIS or Daesh in Maldives. Now, it has been seen that Maldives has one of the highest per capita Daesh fighters. Now, it means that with respect to its population, Maldives has sent the highest number of Daesh fighters in percentage of its population. And due to the defeat of ISIS in Iraq and Syria, what has been seen is that these fighters from Maldives have been returning to their origin country. And this poses a threat to the security of India, Sri Lanka, and Maldives itself. Now, these are the three major concerns that India has with regards to Maldives. And what has happened now is that due to the election of Ibrahim Mohammed Solih, he has asserted that Maldives would continue to follow the India First policy. And one of the reasons that India has given such a huge package of $1.4 billion to Maldives, so that Maldives does not become a client state of China due to the debt trap that China has over Maldives. And therefore, it is within that context that we'll have to wait and see on how the current government of Maldives moves forward with regards to its India First policy. Now, a question was asked in GS Paper 2 in the year 2013, which had asked, discuss the political developments in Maldives in the last 2 years. Should they be of any cause of concern to India? Now, based on the question that was asked in the mains examination of 2013 on India-Maldives relationship, what we'll do is take a question from the test series that had been prepared for GS Paper 2 within the section International Relations, wherein the question that was asked was discuss the political volatility in Maldives in the past 2 years that are of concern for India. Now, what I'll do is provide you the recommended structure for answer, the facts and concept to cite in the answer, and hopefully both of these aspects would help you in self-evaluation for answer writing practice for mains examination. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 7. Now what this article talks about is that the Union Cabinet has approved the expansion of the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, wherein what used to happen till now was that scheme targeted the poor and underprivileged people of India, which were listed in the socio-economic caste census of 2011. However, what was happening was that there were various errors and omissions within the socio-economic and caste census of 2011. And therefore, the Government of India has taken the decision that poor people will be able to opt for the scheme, meaning the Ujjwala Yojana, after providing the required documents. Now, what we'll try to understand from this article is about the Prime Minister Ujjwala Yojana, and we'll try to understand this from the perspective of your upcoming prelims examination of 2019. But before understanding about the scheme, let us understand on how questions have been asked in the previous year prelims examination on government schemes. Now, before starting and understanding the various features from the perspective of your prelims examination, what we'll do first is understand on how government initiatives and government schemes are asked within the prelims exam. So, if you take a look at the prelims examination paper of 2018, a question was asked on the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, wherein the first aspect that this question asked was the implementing agency or the ministry of the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. The second aspect that it asked was the purpose of the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. And the third aspect that it asked was a unique feature with regards to the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. Now, the correct answer to this question is C, 2 and 3, wherein the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana is the flagship scheme of the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. Now, moving forward, if you take a look at the prelims examination paper of 2017, wherein this paper had asked the various objectives of the National Nutrition Mission, wherein the correct answer to this question is A, 1 and 2. Apart from this, in this question, the implementing agency of the National Career Service was asked, and in addition to the purpose of the National Career Service. In addition, a question was asked as to the purpose of the Unnat Bharat Abhiyan, wherein the purpose of the Unnat Bharat Abhiyan is to connect institutions of higher education with local communities. And lastly, if you take a look at the prelims examination paper of 2016, it had asked the purpose of the Uday scheme, which was to provide financial turnaround revival of power distribution companies. Apart from this, it asked for the purpose of the Rashtriya Gramin Abhiyan, and the correct answer to this question is C, to eradicate the practice of manual scavenging. And apart from this, the 2016 paper had also asked a question on Stand Up India scheme in terms of its purpose and in terms of one of its implementing agency, where the correct answer to this question is C, both 1 and 2. Moving forward, it also asked a question on the purpose of the mission Indradhanush, wherein the purpose of the mission Indradhanush is for the immunization of children and pregnant women. And apart from this, it had also asked the purpose of the SWIM initiative of the Government of India, wherein it intends to provide affordable and quality education for the citizens for free. Now, these are some of the questions that have been asked in the prelims examination within the past 3 years on various initiatives and schemes of the Government of India, wherein the main aspects that have been asked is the purpose of the scheme, second, the implementing agency, and lastly, one of the unique features of the scheme. And by understanding these three purviews of any government schemes, you would be able to answer any question in the 2019 prelims examination on government schemes and government initiatives. So now let us understand about the Ujjwala Yojana. Now the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana was first launched in May of 2016 with the tagline Swachh Indhan Behtar Jeevan, meaning clean fuel, better life. Wherein the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana was the first social welfare scheme that has been implemented by the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. Now, the original aim of the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana was to provide 5 crore LPG connections to women from below poverty line households. And these 5 crore LPG connections were required to be provided within the next 3 years, starting from 2016-17. However, in February of 2018, the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs approved to enhance the target base from 5 crore to 8 crore, and this new target of 8 crore needs to be achieved by 2020. Now, the third point with regards to the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana is that it provides a financial support of Rs 1600 for each LPG connection, and this financial support under the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana is only provided to eligible households. And it was in February 2018 that the Cabinet approved a proposal to expand the scheme to cover all SC/ST household, beneficiaries of Anyodaya Anna Yojana, beneficiaries of the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin, forest dwellers, most backward classes, tribes that worked on tea gardens, among other eligible households. Now, one unique feature of this scheme is that the connection under the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana is given in the name of the woman head of the household. Now, the main aim of the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana is that it intends to replace the unclean cooking fuels in the most underprivileged households with clean and more efficient liquefied petroleum gas connections, wherein by providing efficient LPG connections, it seeks for women empowerment, which is highlighted in this article, which would have much more time to undertake other responsibilities rather than collecting unclean cooking fuel such as wood, dung, among other forms of unclean cooking fuel. Secondly, this scheme also intends to decrease the health ailments or the health problems that exist because of the use of unclean cooking fuel. So now hopefully you've understood the basic features of the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana. Now question for practice is which of the following statement is correct with regards to the Prime Minister Ujjwala Yojana? And as you already understand, pause this video, solve this question and wait for 5 seconds for the correct answer. Now the correct answer to this question is C, 3 only. When the Ujjwala Yojana is a flagship scheme of the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. And the scheme intends to provide LPG connections to 8 crore households, and that too by 2020. And therefore the correct answer to this question would be 3 only. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this opinion-based editorial from page 9. Now what this article talks about is that various steps are required to strengthen social audits in India. Now social audits in India were first mandated by law in 2005 under the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act or MNREGA. And what has happened now is that the Parliament, the Supreme Court and many central ministries have mandated social audits to be conducted within their respective areas. And what this has done is shown how people's participation in planning, execution and monitoring of public programs leads to better outcomes. Now what the authors have shown in this article are various shortcomings with regards to social audit in India. Now the first shortcoming that has been identified by the authors is that the auditing agencies, especially in state governments, are not independent. Wherein what is happening is that the funds that are required for auditing are controlled by the government themselves. And similarly, the procedure for appointment of officers within social audit units, especially within the state government, are not clearly provided. The second shortcoming that has been highlighted by the authors is that there are various irregularities in conducting audits, wherein regular social audits are not being conducted. The parameters on which social audits are being conducted are not universally standard in India, and apart from that, there are no regular and adequate staff to conduct social audits. And the third and the final shortcoming that has been highlighted by the authors with regards to social audits is that the reports and the observations that come from social audits are not implemented. Where once social audit reports are made public or given to the government, these reports are not then implemented by the state government, and if any improper activity is also found in these social audit reports, they are also not taken into account by the state governments. Now, after providing the shortcomings, the author has provided various points on what steps can be undertaken to strengthen social audits in India. Now, the first step for improvement that have been provided by the author is that there should be an independent governing body to conduct social audits. The second point provided by the authors is to have real-time management information system, whereby standardized parameters are adopted for conducting social audits. Similarly, the coverage of social audits should be in a continuous and in a regular manner, and this can be done by forming a real-time information management system, whereby all the information should also be made available to the general public. And the third and the last point for improvement that have been provided by the authors is to expand social audits for public programs. When the authors have highlighted that the Supreme Court has asked that there should be mandated social audits under the National Food Security Act, however, it is not being properly implemented by the concerned agencies of the central and the state government. So now hopefully you've understood a brief background of social audits in India. What are the shortcomings of social audits as according to the authors? And what steps can be taken to improve social audits in India? Now with regards to your UPSC syllabus, this article and the explanation given in this section would first be placed in GS paper 2 within the section Governance, and first within the subsection Government Policies and Intervention for development in various sectors and issues arising out of their design and implementation. And secondly, it would also be placed in the subsection Important Aspects of Governance, Transparency and Accountability. And apart from this, this would also be placed in GS paper 4 within the subsection Information Sharing and Transparency in Government. Now question for your mains practice is what is a social audit? What are the shortcomings in effective implementation of social audits in India, and suggest steps for improving the social audit processes. Whereby you can try to answer this question with the help of the article and the explanation given in this section. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now, after understanding various articles in depth, so now let us take a look at some of the articles that have been provided in Daily News Headlines or DNH in a brief format from your UPSC perspective. Now, from page 1. Now, we have already understood this article in depth, whereby India is offering $1.4 billion aid package to Maldives. However, we'll be looking at the news in which the Madras High Court has banned the online sale of drugs, wherein the Madras High Court has said that drugs and cosmetics could not be sold online until the central government notifies the Drug and Cosmetic Amendment Rules of 2018. Now, what this article talks about is that the Drugs and Cosmetics Act of 1940 regulates the import, manufacture, distribution, and sale of drugs and cosmetics in India. However, the Act does not prescribe any form of regulation on e-pharmacies. And it is within that context that the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare had issued a draft notification to amend the Drugs and Cosmetics Act of 1940 so as to regulate the sale and registration of drugs online. And as per the draft rules of 2018, which was given out by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, e-pharmacy would mean any form of business for sale of drugs, either through a web portal or through any other electronic mode. And these draft rules of 2018 also provided for registration of e-pharmacy by the Central Licensing Authority and also established a given procedure for distribution or sale of drugs through e-pharmacy. However, what has currently happened is that the central government has not yet finalized the draft on the regulation of e-pharmacies in India. And it is within that context that the Madras High Court has asked the central government to notify the Drugs and Cosmetics Amendment Rules of 2018. However, you have to understand that this news is currently in transition, wherein we'll have to wait and see on how the Government of India moves forward with the Drugs and Cosmetics Amendment Rules of 2018. And so therefore moving onwards. Now from page 7, we have already looked in depth in this article on LPG scheme to cover poor people, whereby for this article we have already discussed in depth the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, and thereby moving onward. Now we have already looked at this article wherein the Madras High Court has banned the sale of medicines online through e-pharmacies. And therefore what news we need to look at from page 7 is with regards to the plane of the Indian Air Force, which is using blended biofuel. Now what you need to understand from this article is that this biojet fuel technology, which has been developed by the Indian Institute of Petroleum and CSIR, or the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, has developed, tested and certified a hydroprocessed renewable jet, whereby it has converted non-edible oil into biofuel and is being used for the first time on military aircrafts. Whereby what has been done is that fuel produced from the jatropha oil has been blended with aviation turbine fuel, and both of these have been combined together to form a biofuel. However, what is required for you to remember from this article is that when we talk about biofuel, the most commonly used non-edible oil which is used to make biofuel is the jatropha oil. And the second aspect that you need to remember is what is hydroprocessed renewable jet, wherein if it is asked in the prelims examination, you should know it means that to convert non-edible oil into biofuel. And these are the two main aspects that you need to remember from this article. Now the next article that we would look into brief is with regards to the phones that have been provided by ISRO to fishermen in Tamil Nadu. Now what has happened is that the Indian Space Research Organization or ISRO has designed the NAVIC or the Indian Regional Navigation Satellite System, and what ISRO has done is provide 200 receivers based on the NAVIC satellite system to be distributed to fishermen in Tamil Nadu. Now these satellite phones can alert fishermen with regards to any form of natural disaster and allow them communication and navigation while in the high seas. Now these are small facts whereby ISRO has designed NAVIC based receivers or satellite phones which have been distributed to Tamil Nadu fishermen so as to provide them alerts of natural disasters, help them in navigation, and allow them communication while they are at high seas. Now you should understand these brief points from the perspective of your GS paper 3 in the section Disaster Management. So now moving onward, from the editorial page on page 8, we have not discussed the lead editorial, and it was also not taken in the daily news headlines. since what this article talks about is mostly political in nature and therefore it is not relevant with regards to a UPSC examination. However, we have discussed in depth both the editorials, the one with regards to the lifting of ban on oxytocin, and similarly with regards to the critical analysis that the author has given with regards to NOTA. And so thereby moving onward, from page 9, we have already understood the opinion-based editorial on social audit. Now the editorial on the left talks about various concerns with regards to the recently held meeting of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which was held in Poland. Now, Basawa sir has already covered the various concerns with regards to the recently held UNFCCC meeting, which was held in Poland. And this has been covered in the Daily News Simplified video of 16th of December. And what you can do is watch this video to get a comprehensive understanding of the recently held meeting in Poland. The next news we would be looking at is from page 10, wherein what has happened is that the Transgender Bill has been passed in the Lok Sabha. Now you have to understand one thing, that previously questions within the prelims examination or the mains examination have not been asked with regards to bills which are pending within the parliament. And the questions that are asked in the prelims and the mains examination are with regards to acts only. Now, what this Transgender Persons Protection Rights Bill of 2016 aims to do is define who are transgender people, provide various provisions to prohibit discrimination against transgender people, and apart from that, it also intends to form a National Transgender Council so as to take care of the interest of the transgender people. However, as you already understand, that this bill is yet to be passed by the Parliament and has to be given assent by the President of India. And therefore, let us wait and see on how this bill moves forward. And so, thereby moving onwards. Now, from page 13, we would be taking a look at the article in which it states that SBI eyes NASDAQ model for a platform. Now, what had happened was that in 2015, the Securities and Exchange Board of India, or SEBI, had introduced the institutional trading platform. And the main purpose of the institutional trading platform was to enable listing of new age companies and startups on the stock exchange so as to raise money from the capital market. However, what SEBI has done now is change the name of the institutional trading platform to the Innovators Growth Platform. Now, it is not required for you to understand as to what are the norms that are being provided under the institutional trading platform or under the new Innovators Growth Platform, since these specific norms are beyond the purview of your UPSC examination. However, what you need to understand from this article are the purpose of the institutional trading platform and the purpose of the Innovators Growth Platform. And you need to remember the purpose of both of these from the perspective of your upcoming prelims examination of 2019. Apart from that, you also need to remember the Innovators Growth Platform as a point which you can highlight in your mains examination on how the Government of India is helping startups. And so therefore moving onward, now the last news for today that we would be looking at is from page 18. And the last news for brief analysis today is with regards to the Israeli spacecraft. Now the first thing that you need to understand from this article is that Bereshit, or which means Genesis in the Hebrew language, is the first spacecraft that would be launched by Israel to the moon. And therefore, this is the first thing that you need to remember from this article, especially with regards to your upcoming prelims examination of 2019. And this spacecraft is expected to land on the moon, and this would make Israel the fourth country in the world which would have the capability to land on the moon. Wherein it is the United States, the Soviet Union, and China, which are the other three countries which have landed a spacecraft on the moon. Now, India also intends to become the fourth country to land on the moon with its Chandrayaan 2. Now, the second aspect that you need to remember from this article is that this Israeli spacecraft will be sent via the Falcon 9, which is part of the SpaceX program. And if Falcon 9 of the SpaceX program is able to send this Israeli spacecraft to the moon, it would become the first private organization in the world to land an object on the moon. Now, these are the two main aspects that you need to remember from this article, especially with regards to your upcoming prelims examination of 2019. And therefore, with this, we have been able to have a complete analysis of today's newspaper based on the articles that have been selected in daily news headlines. And now with this, we come to an end in the analysis of today's newspaper. Now we move on to the question for today.